Hello and welcome to Sem Strategy Gaming. I'm Sem. In this episode, we will talk about making money. Now, being rich doesn't contribute to your score at the end of the game, but it's still very important in order to achieve the mission objectives throughout the game, as everything has a cost in credits. The first and perhaps most important is how you start out, as wealth accumulates throughout the game, meaning that any credits earned at the start of the game is worth at least 10 times any credits you make at the end. We refer to this as inflation, and it's due to the fact that it takes money to make money. As you start out, you often have very little money, and the most straightforward way of getting more money is simply to issue bonds. You just go straight into the bank and ask for more money, and then money magically appears. And a very, very smart trick here is not to ask for the biggest bond right away, because if you do that, you can't ask for any more often. How these bonds work is a little mysterious and magical, but here, where the smallest bond and the medium bond and the biggest bond, they are pretty much the same size. So here I would start out with the medium bond first, and then one can see I still have access to having more bonds if I do it like this. If I had the biggest bond first, I wouldn't have any more opportunities. So start out with a medium bond here, and then go for the biggest. Sometimes you can ask for two small bonds if they are really, really, really small. You can ask for two really small bonds instead of one medium one. And so the option of having a medium one and a big one, or two small ones. If you're really lucky, you can have two small ones and then one big one. But here I can clearly see that I can't ask for two little ones, so I ask for a medium one and then a big one like this. And then I have pretty much the max. So I do this pretty much right away. Second, most important thing is to connect to absolutely every connection bonus before you unpause the game. Even though that might seem contradictory to some plan that you're having different opinions about how this should look at in the end, you just get the connection bonuses right away. And sometimes in order to do that, you have to buy up these concessions, like here in Ireland. All of the connection bonuses are in different concession zones, and then we have to buy the concessions, of course, in order to connect to them. If there are concessions that does not contain any connection bonuses, do not buy them. Spend your money on something else. Even though the concessions becomes a little bit more expensive later on, it has to do with this inflation. Every time you buy an industry or every time you build a station, everything in the game becomes a little bit more expensive. But still, you're always also making a lot more money all the time. So then it's much better to pay a little bit more for the concession zones when you're having much more money. Be really stingy in the beginning about how you're spending your money. And now I've connected to all the connection bonuses, but money was still really scarce. I had to buy up all the concessions and then lay all these rails. So I could only afford one single line like this, going round in just clockwise direction, which of course is not entirely optimal. I would like to have one line in each direction in order to properly connect everything to everything. And then I could also only afford one train in in each of these, starting them in the actual connection bonuses. See here, one in Manning, one in McGovern, one in Belfast, and one in Galloway. And then I have one in Cork as well. and then some few little freight trains. But of course, this is way too little. But see now, just how when I unpause, I will have all the connection bonuses coming in, and then I will be able not only to build my system bigger, but I will also be able to do a little trick with reloaning. So let's see how that plays out. And now that all the connection bonuses have come in, I've got a lot of money, much more, about 1.5 million, and I might be able to complete a tour around on a different way, adding this into a two-lane system instead of this awkward just one-way direction. But see now, if I go back into the bank now, I can repay my bonds, redeem them. And one see that there is this penalty interest, which is due to the fact that I'm paying it back too fast. And the longer the term is, the higher the penalty interest. But one can see that the penalty interest isn't really that much of a penalty, a little less than 13,000. That's not so much money. But see now, I'm paying back 360,000 bond, and then I can have a 451,000 bond, because my company is now worth much more because I have all that cash at hand. And that makes me a more valuable company. And with a more valuable company, you can go into the bank and you can ask for more bonds. So now I have a little bit more, and that little bit extra, that might make for just enough so that I can build the other way around as well. And to have this in the beginning, and to be really stingy, and to get your hands on as much money as absolutely possible, and make sure that you are able to set up a good system at the start. Even though I have some little interest here, but one can see that I'm paying 7,000 for personnel, and more than 400 for fuel, and the interest rate is just 60 per week. That is pretty much nothing. And the important thing is to get a really nice system up and running as soon as possible. And now, about a year into the game, I've been able to achieve enough money to set up this system properly. So one can now see that there are two lines in each direction, and having a proper number of trains on them. So then we can have a look at our budget, the company here, taking note that we have about 5% traffic jams versus journey time. That is a good thing. That means that we have the right amount, pretty much, of trains on our tracks. And then also that we have 77% production capacity utilization. Have bought up some few factories and rural businesses, because that is one of the mission objectives in this game, to not only build rails, but to also own a proper amount of businesses. Now, if we look at our budget, quarterly reports, we see that we are making the absolute least on production. Now, I have bought up some, and we're making 35,000. That is not really a big thing. And we're making so much more on transporting the freight, and also much more on mail and passengers. But I want everybody to take a close look at how this in the very beginning, the freight is absolutely dominating. It is more than twice the amount made from freight from mail and passenger in the first quarter. And in the second quarter, this goes a little bit down. And then as we reach the fourth quarter, passenger and mail is worth about the same as freight. And then later on in the game, as we advance, freight will become less and less important, and mail and passengers will become more and more important as our cities grow due to being fed by the freight. So freight is most important in the beginning, and then comes passengers as the second most important, and then mail is absolutely by far the most important thing in the later games. While production doesn't really give us a lot of money from just producing, they are just a founding stone for building the cities. And it's a good thing, very, very, very good tip, not to buy any rural businesses or factories that one doesn't absolutely need. They are very expensive, and it means that if you buy them, you have to bump them up. While if you don't buy them, the private industry will bump them up pretty much fast enough. So if there are still cities to be connected to on the map that you have access to, rather connect to them, rather focus on having more passengers and mail, and not get bogged down into being constantly having to pay to upgrade these rural businesses, even though as the rural businesses they cost more if they are utilized more. You can see this one, it's having a more or less proper utilization, cost 360,000. They also cost more for every station. The more they utilize, the more they cost, and also the more businesses you own beforehand, and the more stations you own beforehand, the more they cost. While this one up here, it might cost a little bit less because it hasn't been utilized at all. So it might be tempting to buy up these cheap businesses in the beginning, but if they are not running, then you are paying money for just having the laborers standing around there. The laborers will still be there, and you have to pay them personnel costs, but you're not making any money from them. So laying rails are much more lucrative in Railway Empire than to be producing stuff. But sometimes, of course, you have to produce stuff. It might be a mission objective, or it might contribute to the growth of the cities. And one can see now here that in Dublin, what we're making our money is due to having proper connections. And now sometimes there aren't good connections. Dublin is not really passenger-wise connected to Galway and Sligo, and that is due to there being more than twice the air distance to go around here. You can see there's a long way around from Sligo all the way to Belfast and then to Dublin, or from Dublin, Waterford, Cork, Galway. That is more than twice the distance just to go straight over. So we'll have to do something about that later in order to connect all the cities passenger-wise, because express goods are worth much more than freight, and producing stuff is the least profitable thing to be earning money from. And you can also lose money from having too many factories and bumping them up too much. That is a much more advanced part of the game that one usually only do because it is a mission objective to do so. And now, at the very end of this scenario, we have been able to complete our railway setup. connected all the cities passenger-wise, so that we in Dublin now have a connection to every city. All the resources have been connected, and a lot of them have been bought up due to that being one of the mission objectives, to have 20 of these businesses. And we must now keep in mind that we are playing as the professor, and that he has this very, very serious drawback to have 15% less revenue from passenger and mail. But looking at our quarterly reports, we still see that now we are making more money from passengers and mail, even though we play as the professor, and we put passenger and mail together, and even on this very small map where we are making little from passenger and mail and also playing as the professor, we are still making more from express goods than we are making from freight goods. And even as we are owning all of these businesses, and they are running pretty smoothly, 78%, that is a good thing. We are making minuscule amount of money from production. So production is by far the least profitable thing to invest in, but of course it can make for a good city growth that again makes for more express goods to be shipped from them. You can see that there is an increase in the amount of passengers and mails that are going to the different cities as the city grow. So that is of course a very good thing to lay a proper cornerstone for producing. But then again, the private industry, they if we don't own the industry, then the private sector will own them, and then we are still making much more money from just picking up the private goods and shipping them into the cities than actually owning the cities, the factories and the rural businesses themselves. One last thing to look at is which lines are earning the most. And we can see that here I have one mixed line in between Dublin and Waterford, and that is our prime earner. This makes almost 83,000 credits a week, which is very nice, at least in this very early game, to have such a nice revenue. And there is another mixed line here. You can only set up one mixed line because it goes back and forth in this perpendicular manner here, which makes it hard to have. It would be a very long gridiron. It would have to turn into an 8-line gridiron. So we are making the second most from that. So our two top earners are mixed lines, because mixed lines are pretty much always filled up to the brim. And that is the most important thing, to have full trains running, to have trains running with a few wagons. That is always less profitable than to have full wagons. And besides, they're also contributing a lot to the growth. And then our second best earners are these passenger lines that I've set up, one in each direction here on this southern Irish route, the biggest one. They have now been added up to a 4-lane track with 2 express lines in the middle. Then of course achieve the express bonus, and then there are 2 freight lines, because it was so important to grow the cities and to make sure that all the cities were receiving these goods. But one can see that the express lines are making less money than the mixed lines in many cases, even though they have the special wagons and have much more expensive trains and really are something. And that is due to they refuse when you put them up on this loading express. That means that they, even though they have room for more goods, they will refuse to pick up freight goods to always have room for more passengers, and also because they have so low tractive power, these express trains, that if you were to put freight goods on them, they would go very slow. So to keep them like this. But of course, when I put on the special wagons, that makes us a lot of extra money, 25% from mail and 25% extra from passengers. That is, of course, a very nice thing, but that means that the maximum amount of trains filled with profitable goods go down to only like this one. It might have room here for more than 6, but the maximum now is 6 paying wagons. The mail cart and the post wagon, they don't pay anything by themselves. They just make the other lines more, other wagons more profitable. And then it is the freight trains. They are often making the least, because we earn the least from freight goods, and then we are making more money from express goods, and this one refuse to pick up any express goods. Sometimes there might be mixed lines for some reason that are making less money, but usually mixed lines are the most profitable. And then if one has some good express trains and want to achieve the express bonus, it's nice to have a couple of express lines as well. And if one can put this up very cleverly, then one can make extra money from this. But having the express bonus, having the express trains, having the special wagons, having these extra costly express trains, all comes into that they cost a lot, and it doesn't necessarily make that much more money. And and then of course one needs some of these others to build up the cities, and building up the cities so that they have more passengers. That is always a very good thing. But then make absolutely certain that they are connected, all of these cities. That is the way to really make money, to make sure that all the cities are more or less properly growing. It doesn't need to have 100%, but they need to have at least reach some nice size. But as soon as they reach university size, they're producing an enormous amount of express goods. And if all of that express goods can go to every which city being connected to every other city, that is the way to really make money. But okay, so let's look at a completely different example. Still the same strategy, but here on a different level. On the Nord Express, a much bigger map, and we're also playing with the entrepreneur that gives extra bonus from express trains. So she's quite the opposite of the professor. She's earning much more from passengers, where the professor earns much less. But first of all, I want to say now here, one can be really lucky. You see, there is a big difference between these sizes of the loans. And if one goes back a little bit, save and load a little, one can perhaps figure out the smartest way to do this. So now, if I take the smallest one first, and then a medium one, and then I can have a big one on top, that really makes for a great loan in the bank. Of course, it's going to pay a little bit of interest on this, but that doesn't really matter, because I have to connect to all of the different connection bonuses, and means that I have to go all the way up here in Strasbourg. So first of all, I will have to buy this concession zone that costs me a little bit, and then also a mission objective to buy this small route down here. I very seldomly buy these routes unless it's absolutely necessary, but now it is. And as soon as one buys anything that has been built by a competitor or a computer or anything, just delete that right away. It's not worth having at all. And so we are going to connect to all the connection bonuses, and we have to do that. We don't have that much money, but we still have to do it any which way that it is possible. And the way that I'm now connected to all the connection bonuses, you can see the trains now here. I didn't have money to build a proper system like on Ireland. I just had to connect pretty much everything to everything. So then there is this sort of half moon shaped thing here from Lille Paris Rams. And then I could only afford the tiniest little one-liner in between. That was a two-liner from Lille to Rams. And then there is a one-liner here from Luxembourg to Rams. And then there is a two-liner here. So they just piecemeal this these tracks that I built and the lines that I set up. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter so much. There's only one line down here on the course and can only afford one train, having very few locomotives. The locomotives are quite expensive. But just set up whatever, and as soon as these connection bonuses are rolling in, now it wouldn't be so easy to just repay back those loans and get a bigger one. Perhaps, let's see if I can manage that. If I pay back the biggest one, the most expensive, yes, and then one can have a bigger loan on top of that. So that's one way to do it. And see also that I start out with no, very important also, do not build any stations extensions in the beginning. The trains can run for quite some time without being maintained. They can go back and forth quite a bit, and then one doesn't need it. And then I had to set up an express train here, because that's what was one of the mission objectives, to achieve an express status between Paris and Lille. But in the very beginning, only mixed lines are really profitable. This one going back and forth with one wagon in each direction, because the cities are so small, they are producing so little. This isn't really worth it. I just set it up, achieve the mission objective, and then delete it right away. And then now, with the reload and all the connection bonuses, then one can build something more proper. But the most important thing is loan as much money as absolutely possible, get all the connection bonuses coming in, then loan a little bit more than was actually possible in the beginning, and then you can start building some real nice structure. Just keep in mind that one cannot immediately delete the stations where one had the connection bonuses coming from. So now if I placed Luxembourg on a awkward place, then if I now were to try to delete it and wanted to build it in a different manner, then I would lose out on my connection bonus, and this I should absolutely not want to do. One need to keep the express bonuses there. And now I advanced quite a bit into the game, with building up a proper structure here with many nice economic zones all linked together. And then, as we now have a look at our budget, we can see that the difference between express goods, the revenues made from express goods, and the revenue made from freight, they just become larger and larger. At the quarter budget in 1890, freight was almost as much as passenger and mail. But then, as we kept on expanding, in 4 quarters later, passengers are almost twice the amount. We make twice the amount from passengers as we are making from freight goods, and we're making more from mail. And this has to do with this, that the larger our empire becomes, the more we make from mail, because mail travels much further. Looking at Paris here at the very end, we see, looking at this, we see that the closest cities, they have many passengers that want to go to the closest cities, but the further cities, they do not perhaps have so many passengers that want to go there, but they still have a lot of mail that wants to go there. So for large empires, mail is more important. For small empires, passengers are more important. And in the very beginning, when the cities are very small and doesn't produce so many express goods, then freight is more important. And keeping this in mind, it makes it such that for small empires do build restaurants and perhaps even marketplaces, but for large empires do build post offices. See, that I haven't really built so many. I usually build the warehouses because they're in between these zones. But say here with Hanover, for example, which is sort of alone, one makes have a the mail is bumped up by 20% for with a post office, and the post office also costs less than a restaurant. The restaurant bumps up the revenue from passengers by 15% and costs 50 a bit more, almost 52,000. And a post office bumps it up by 20% and costs only 43,000. So a post office in the later game is better than the restaurant, but in the early game, when your empire is sort of not so big, then restaurants are better. I very seldomly build the market hall, but then one can pay heed to this, that there shouldn't be more than, say, 5 or 6% ratio between traffic jams and journey time. And one way to, because if it is more than 6%, that means that it clogs up too much, there is too much waiting time, and it doesn't really produce, there isn't really an increase in transport capacity. It is just more trains waiting more and more, and then personnel cost goes up, and maintenance cost goes up, and fuel cost goes up, while you're not really transporting any more goods. And one way to make it so that you can have more trains on a station is to have these dispatch halls. But dispatch halls are more expensive than the restaurants even. So one might be a little reluctant by buying dispatch halls, but if I have the money for it, then I buy a dispatch hall. But I pretty much only do that at rural stations with maintenance depots connected to them, and maintenance depots all over is really important, because that means that if there were too few maintenance depots, all of the trains would be waiting for those to receive their maintenance at those few maintenance depots that were. And one wants to build lines that fills up pretty much to the max, that one can have this as many trains as absolutely possible without having more than 5, 6, perhaps max 7% waiting time. And then it's a very good thing to have the maintenance depots spread all over, so that they don't clog up around those few maintenance depots that are. But now I want to talk about these competitors. These competitors might not be the smartest. They lay these really awkward rails, and they're not really making a lot of money. But when it comes to dealing with them, there's a lot of smart things that one can do. So first of all, now we have the mission objective to buy up our competitor as soon as we just have delivered those last tools. And then do not buy the concession that is owned by a competitor. because if you now go in here, and we might perhaps borrow even a little bit more extra money just to make sure, and then we go in and we see we start out with a bit more than 18 millions, and we spend 4 millions on buying her up, and then we get a lot of she had some money, and we get all of our money, and then as we merge with her, we always liquidate everything. There's no point in keeping around those awkwardly built lines, and we see now that I only lost about a couple of 100,000 from buying her up, because she was one of those expansionists. She didn't own a lot of factories. If she were to own a lot of factories, and we will look at that later, as this other competitor who has also built a very awkward looking line, he owns a lot of these factories. And when we buy up an industrialist, that is very expensive and very unprofitable. But buying up an expansionist that has a lot of money on hand, and also has a lot of trains and tracks that we can delete, that is actually in many ways a profitable thing to do. And at least it makes it such that we don't have to build around the existing infrastructure and building a lot of bridges and perhaps even tunnels to get around them. So all in all, we actually made money from buying our first competitor, the expansionist, when we take into account that we got her concession zone for free, as we can see here. And we are now ready to just move on along. Nothing, no existing infrastructure in our way, and the concession absolutely free. Now we are at the very end of this very big and challenging last chapter of the campaign, and we pretty much only have to put all our competitors out of business, meaning that we have to put this last gangster out of his business. But he is enormously expensive, 500,000, more than 500,000 per stock, and we need to have 100% of the stocks, so 100 ones of these. They are going to cost us quite a fortune, and even though money are rolling in from our entire empire, we still need more than 82 millions. And how to achieve that? We see that we already have 5 bonds, and that is the maximum amount of bonds that we can have. But see if we can pay back, redeem some of these loans. We cannot have a new one now, but perhaps if I redeem this one as well, and this one, yes, now I can have a bit of a bigger bond. But still, that isn't enough money. So in order to buy him up, now that we are at the very end of the game, there are a couple of little tricks. One can go through all of the stations extensions one by one and delete them all, but that is very little money coming in from that. We can also delete a lot of these trains that we're having. See if there are some really big lines here. Can perhaps not entirely delete them, but move them down to say just one single train. Then we get a refund of 2 million here. That means that all the goods that have transported goes back to the start. But anyways, that is not such that loses out on a lot of the work that they have done, and we are not getting those money back. We sort of have to start all over. But let's see now. If I just give me a minute, I will be able to delete enough rail lines in order for us to be able to buy them up. And let's see what happened then when we are buying up an industrialist instead of expansionist. And now, with our re-loan strategy and also deleting a lot of our trains, really breaks my heart. But still, we got enough money. Let's see now what happens when we are merging with him. We have 83 millions at hand. We go in here and we spend 82 of them. He didn't have any money for us at all. And his stock price now increased a lot because we gave him all that money. But if we now merge him and liquidate everything, we just got less than 4 millions back. And this is due to the fact that when we are merging, we are not getting his industries. The rural businesses, they go back to being privately owned, and we have to buy them up again if we want to do that. And all of his factories are being deleted. They just go away. So we have to buy something else there, or we have to wait for private industry to build something there. So this was a huge cost, and it was not beneficial to us at all. It just made us achieve the mission objective. Of course, it's a little easier to build around them, but if a competitor owns a lot of factories, then it's not a good business to buy him up. But anyways, before we bought him up, we should perhaps have had a quick look at the lines and see what are we making the most money from. Even though keeping in mind that we are playing as the entrepreneur that has this nice extra express bonus, it is really hard sometimes to achieve express bonuses, particularly on the flat maps. On maps with higher inclines, the high incline is taken into account on whether or not it should make for an express bonus or not. But when the map is so flat, like this, entirely flat all over this Central Europe, and the little mountains we can easily build around them, that makes it really hard to achieve express bonuses. And I would say express bonuses aren't really that important. And we can see that now. Our top earners, the 4 of them, they are all mixed lines, because mixed lines fill up so much easier. They have all 8 wagons available to them, and they can fill up with both all types of goods. And that means that they are often running on a much fuller load, and also that they cost less. They have cheaper locomotives. See here, this Prussian, it costs 63, while the freight is even a bit cheaper, while the express here is absolutely the most expensive one. Might have been a different story if the express train was also the most modern one. Now the mixed train is the most modern and the latest train that we have. And of course the latest trains are usually better than the earlier trains. But now with an express train as the least modern of the 3 types, freight, mixed and express, we are not earning that much money from express. And even though this one on the 5th place here, with that has achieved an express bonus, it is not always so filled up. And even when it is filled up, it has these 2 special wagons that of course are making extra revenue, and you should use the special wagons, at least the dining wagon and the mail cart, not perhaps the caboose, because then the train becomes so filled up, and it's easier to just achieve the maximum efficiency on personnel from bumping up the personnel to 125 by just either giving them a bonus or more training or recruitment or something else, and not use the caboose, because then the trains become so full. But looking here now, of course, there are a lot of these trains that are express trains that are earning quite a bit of money. But still, one should never neglect the mixed trains. So they're often coming up very high, and they are also contributing to further growth so that we can have even more passengers coming from the cities. Having a quick look at all of the trains, sometimes it is not perhaps so easy to understand why they are making a lot of money or why they're making a little money. But if we go all the way down to the bottom, and see that these freight onlys, they are usually not earning that much because we earn so little from freight in the late game. But still, they're of course very important in order to make the cities grow. But I want to point out that the train that we are earning the least from, the ones that are actually are losing the most money, is this express line that just goes from Eidkunden, which is a very small city, up to Königsberg, which is also a very small city. It has very few passengers. It should perhaps not have so many trains, but still there are just one passenger wagon and one mail wagon to be picked up, and they are not even full. There can be up to 40 passengers in each train, and this one only has 4. And it can have 40 males, and this one only has 2. So of course this makes for this warning triangle here that says that it's actually having a negative balance, which is a thing to absolutely avoid. It should be, but that was due to it was hard to build something proper around all of our competitors' zone here, and yeah, sometimes it just ends up being that. But keep in mind that express lines aren't necessarily the best. Often one can do very fine with just mixed lines. But let's have a look at our budget. See now that we have a lot of businesses and they're running at 76% efficiency, capacity utilization, which is what one pretty much can expect. It's hard to run 100%. So, but see here now that we are earning even in the first quarter, the second quarter of 1891, we are earning 2.5 millions from freight and over 8.5 million for express goods, and production is just 2,000, so that's very little, and that means that we are earning about 4 times as much from express goods as we are earning from freight. So even if one is playing, as say, with the general or even the professor, express goods is absolutely the most profitable way of making money. But the express goods doesn't need an express train. They can of course be hauled by a mixed train, or even freight trains can be put on mixed transportation. Often I would do that if there are high inclines, and just make sure that the trains are running and that they can pick up these profitable express goods. But in the latest quarter, the first quarter of 92, we are earning an incredible amount of money from mail, because then we have expanded to all of the cities on this huge map, and we are making more from mail than we are making from passengers and freight combined. While just 4 quarters before that, we were earning the same from mail and passengers, because in early 91, we only had this portion of the map built out. But as I expanded onto all of the other cities, then there is so much more mail running. So of course, post offices at this stage would be very profitable. One other really good tip in order to make a lot of money is to offer these express bonuses. And we can see now that the bank, the newly founded Oklahoma City, now only has less than 1,000 citizens, and it has the minimum amount of passengers and mail going in every which direction where it is being connected. and that doesn't really make for that much, just 7 passengers and 7 males. And then if one offers this settler bonus, that is kind of expensive, and it's more expensive the smaller the city are. You can see that now it costs a little bit less because it grew a little bit, but offer it as soon as possible, because to have 100% growth, as long as of course it is growing, it needs to be growing. If one offers it to a city that is declining or having a demand that is less than 60%, it is absolutely no point. But it's easy to have these tiny cities fulfilled with their demand, because the demands are so small. Then later on they will grow and become really big, nice cities. We can see here with Dodge, that was also a tiny little settlement. It's 100% fulfillment of demand. It's really booming. And of course, they stop having this 100% extra growth as they reach 10,000. But to have them come up to 10,000 as soon as possible, that is really the big trick, because again, we are earning the most from express goods. And the bigger the cities, the more express goods they produce. And here now, a little bit later into the game, one can clearly see the benefits of having offered express settler bonuses to all of these cities. Oklahoma, grown into a really nice big city, 32,000. Dallas started out as a city, I think, but we offered one in Abilene, and also in Amarillo. It will be offered as soon as it has reached, just taking a little bit of time. And to offer this all over, and to have Rock Springs and Grand Junction, Cheyenne, all of these tiny little settlements all over the map that aren't really producing any much express goods, and they'll be making very little money from them. Having them as fast as possible grow into proper cities and making for a really nice revenue. You can see here now that in the first quarter of 1870, mail freight is the most profitable. And then as we just a year later, mail is actually freight is actually the least profitable, and passengers and mail are absolutely taken over. And as we proceed further into the game, freight will be pretty steady and not growing that much, but the mails and passengers will make us an absolute fortune. And furthermore, another trick in order to have more express goods when they are sort of early in the game here in this German confederation, but there are several competitors here, and then instead of buying up our competitors right away, and I think that on this map we cannot really buy them up so easily, at least. Then instead of we can buy them up, but we don't have the money for it yet, and we still have so much else to do on the map. There are still so many other things that we want to prioritize, but to connect to our competitors' cities and then make them not his cities but our cities instead. This makes it such that the people say here at Kassel, for example, they can now of course travel to Frankfurt, but not only to Frankfurt but also to Worms, and then further on to Ulm, and perhaps Zurich, on also to Zurich. And this goes for a lot of the other cities as well. Say with Gütersloh, they can at least travel to Frankfurt, to Worms, and to Ulm. They don't want to, and also to Zurich. Yes, So that makes for a lot more passengers using this little line that one should perhaps think was only between these two kind of half small cities of Kassel and Frankfurt. But to be connecting to his rail network makes for a lot of extra passengers from all of all of our surrounding cities to wanting to use his rail network through our lines. Of course, our competitor is also making money from the collaboration. That means that a lot of more of his passengers from Zurich, Ulm, and Worms wants to go not only to Frankfurt but also to Kassel and Gütersloh, Hanover, Magdeburg. So it goes both ways. But we are making a lot more from this than he does. It is much more important for us to make money than to hinder him from making money, because after all, the AI isn't really that clever in this game, and a human playing this game for some time can become really clever. So it's much better to do what is good for us than to do what is hurtful for our competitor. The same goes for these saboteurs. If I had a saboteur, I wouldn't use that to damage his lines or to but rather to steal his tech. Just have a collaborator and then go into his headquarters and click on that and then see if one can steal a tech. And that would benefit us, but it wouldn't hurt him. But it's much better to do good by us than to do bad by others. That should be a trick to keep in mind. And now I just want to point out what an absolute great thing hotels are. Next to warehouses, hotels are perhaps the greatest thing to be building. We can see here now that this map here, this southern parts of America, it is a little awkward building these circular zones that I'm such a fan of. And then it makes it hard to connect them all together. But now I've built a hotel here at King that is running very nice, and I built a hotel here at Jones that is running very nice, and here at Baker, White, and Pastors I built for this hotel triangle that connects these zones at three different places, and we can see that they are running really well. And then we achieved all our goals. But to have these hotels running really smoothly and to make for shorter passenger trains, to make them go to one makes more from passengers the faster the routes are. And then these hotels, they can often shorten down the traveling time a lot. And that doesn't only make for us to be able to complete our delivery faster, but it also makes the passengers want to pay more for a fast travel. That is sort of logical. If you reach your goal faster, that is considered a greater service, and then one pays more, and then we get more for less. Actually, we spend less. We spend less maintenance, less personnel costs, and we can do the routes quicker. And then by these hotels, these passengers also pay more for the service, which is also a very good tip. The last thing that I want to go into when it comes to making money, which I might have mentioned a couple of times before, is that one makes a lot more money from express goods. I can see here now on the Scandinavian map that where we have bought up an enormous amount of industry, and the industry is running really well, over 80% capacity utilization. Everything is set up really smooth, really nicely, and we are doing a really industrious adventure here. But still, freight, 14 millions, a little bit more than 14 millions in the last quarter. And then production, only 12 millions, even though we have invested enormous sums. One can see here how much we spend on these factories, just 60 millions in the last quarter, and then 11 millions on rural businesses. And the quarter before that, we spent 30 millions or 40 millions of those combined, 50 millions before that. We're spending millions and millions and millions upon expanding our industries, but we are not getting this money back. Or you might say that we are growing our cities really nicely. So then some of the reasons for our enormous mail and passenger revenues are due to these goods that are produced, and they're then being brought in as freight. But still, with all of these industries that we have bought, if we look at them now, I have an acquisition cost here of 5 millions. I'm making 51,000 per week and have a total profit of 1.8. And it's going to take a long time until I make all the money back. And sometimes the total profit is in minus, because we see here that as soon as we drop below 50% utilization, and that might easily happen, particularly with furnitures that require planks, and then planks require lumber, and sometimes somewhere along the line that there might be clogging up or not producing that much. Very easy to lose money on these industrial adventures. And then if you just leave that to the private sector, they can take all the losses and they can produce these goods for us just as easy as we can produce them ourselves. And there are very few of these industries that I actually make money from in the long run. Well, in contrast, it doesn't cost that much to lay a rail. And then I get, as soon as I lay the rail and put some locomotives on, these passengers will start rolling in, and there will always be some goods to fulfill their demands. So I much rather stick to having the private industry stand for production, and then I pick up the freight and make sure that they go into the cities, and then make sure that the cities are growing more, say, naturally, instead of having absolute control over every industry. I'm a firm believer in private enterprise and a free market economy, and this to own everything seems to me a little bit more like planned communist economy. So the last and perhaps most important tips is not get into buying every which one of these very expensive places where goods are produced, unless of course there is a particular mission objective. And here in Scandinavia, of course there is a mission objective to own a total of 20 cities or businesses, so we have to own at least that to do that. But then often I just buy up the cheapest ones and don't really care that much. I buy the ones that aren't connected, the ones that are far off, the ones that aren't being used, and rather have a private industry stand for this. That there's one thing to buy them up, that is just the first cause, but then to always bump them up as well. And private industry bumps them up for free as long as we just make sure that they are running, and so that we are picking up the goods and delivering them somewhere. But then, of course, on this particular very extra hard map, we have to reach 500,000 citizens in Copenhagen, and that requires us to buy up a lot of industries and really control the flow of goods more in detail. But my perhaps best tip when it comes to making money is sure that you are connected to all of the cities and that you have enough train capacity to bring the goods that are already being produced, and take, of course, all the passengers that are being produced, or that comes from the cities, before you get into the industrial endeavor. Connect everything with mixed line first, and then set up some passenger lines when everything has been connected, and then one can go into the industrial adventure. This is sort of the last part of the game. If one starts buying industries right away and has this urge to own and control absolutely everything, that is usually one of the ways to have a poor score in the end. But anyways, that I think pretty much sums up all my best tips. One can feel free to like and subscribe, and please leave some comments if anything that I said now was not entirely correct, or if somebody has a better tip. Then please let me know, and I promise to answer all the comments, and perhaps even make another video if something were unclear or perhaps not entirely right. And keep in mind that there aren't any really right way of playing Railway Empire. It is a sandbox game. It is entirely open world. So one can achieve the mission objectives in multiple different manners. But anyways, enjoy the game and take care. And then I hope to see you next time around. Goodbye.